Hello students, today we are going to see three games. The first game is between Bisco and Karpov from 1972. Let's start this amazing game. Okay, this game is an isolated pawn masterclass. You'll learn how to outplay your opponent when your opponent is with the isolated pawn. How to just outplay them by the greatest person who can teach you about it, Anatoly Karpov. Karpov is the nemesis of the isolated pawn. Karpov hates. Karpov always plays against the isolated pawn and has very big results against it. Why? He uses the practical strategies to outwit his opponent through the game. So now let's start the game. The game started. C4. Karpov was black, Bisco was white. His opponent I am Arthur Bisco was a kind of a solid player, like not that aggressive, not that. He was a very solid player and played very solid openings. Like not even d4, he played c4, one of the most solid openings there. Like knight f3 and c4 are considered. c4, c5. Knight c3, g6. Now g3 is the main line, but knight f3 was played in the game. Bishop g7, e3, knight f6, d4. This is the e3 d4 system of the symmetrical English, and this setup is not that active. This setup is passive, and we get active and in the main line equal position from it, where we have activity. So the main line continues short castle, bishop e2. Now if dc5, then we can gain the pawn very strongly, like knight a6 does the job. Knight a6, nice move, queen c2 and just knight into c5. And if you play b4, like this looks uncomfortable, but here we use a tactic knight c4, knight into e4, knight into e4. And now this a1 rook is attacked, so you can't play queen into e4. Bishop b2, bishop into b2, queen into and a5, and this position is fine for black. Even I judge it more easy to play it with black, because we have a stellar knight on e4, queenside counterplay, and opponent doesn't have anything. Like he can't even start an attack on us because of the demise of the g7 bishop. But you can't even start an attack, you have to castle short. And I am just starting a queenside minority attack with afterwards d5, bishop f5, queen c7, queen b6, rook f c8, at some time b5. It's just the heat is going up. That's why d into c5 is not that good move. The main theory follows: bishop c2, c into d4, e into d4, d5, short castle, knight c6. Both sides wait for the trade of the isolated pawn. h3, bishop f5, bishop e3, and now Karpov finally does it. Does what? The trade. D into c4. Okay, well, this now after bishop into c4, this pawn is officially an isolated pawn. Now those of who are wondering what is d5, d5 is met by knight b4, bishop into c4, and I bet many of you haven't noticed this. Knight c2 is coming. Rook c1, there's knight into e3, f into e3, and then queen to d6. And now black is better because white's king side is weak, and white's center is not like pushing that much. That's not a flow you expect from the center. In the game, bishop e3, d into c4, bishop into c4. Now officially we are starting with the isolated pawn position, and now let's see how Karpov improves from this position bit by bit. Step number 1. Control the square below the isolated pawn. It is so important, I say it again, so important for the side which is playing against the isolated pawn. Control the square above the isolated pawn. Like the d4 pawn now, behind this d4 pawn is d5 square. Like control the square which is one rank more than the isolated pawns 5. Like this time d5. If you have e4, actually this is 2. If you are black and have d5, if you are white and your opponent has d5 isolated pawn, control d4. If you are white and your opponent has d4 isolated pawn, control d5. If you are black and your opponent has d4 isolated pawn, control d5. The square in front of the isolated pawn is very important to control, because if you don't control, you will allow one of the main ideas the isolated pawn player has at its arsenal. The pawn push d5. Then he will have tremendous activity through files and would just crush you. If you once allow d5, it would be just very very bad. Like let's say you play something like king h8. You will allow d5 and see all of a sudden the advantage 1.5, 1.7. It's going, see, 1.7 advantage is showing. Like you do 1 pointless move and the advantage goes to the opponent. d5 is very important not to be allowed. Now after bishop c4 was played rook c8, logical move. Now if you play d5, I play knight a5 with the nice idea that if you go back e2, I play knight e4, and normally white has the activity, but now black has the activity. So bishop b3 is forced, then you play knight into b3, trading off the bishop into b3, a5, and we have nice activity. Knight a5 was also an option. Knight a, actually rook c8 was played, and rook c8 idea d5 knight a5, so that's why it was played bishop e2. But this is inaccuracy, and see how he exploits it. So now let's get into some slicey dicey. Now opponent has made an inaccuracy. Scores have officially gone below from 0.0.2 to 0.7. Let's see how we exploit it. Firstly, Karpov controls the square above the isolated pawn, the d5 square, and now he plays bishop e6. Interesting move, also nice one. And I have to and first we will discuss here in this position, in the starting of the isolated pawn, we'll first discuss the ideas. You need to know the idea. You definitely need to know if you are going to master the isolated pawn. These are one of the basic ideas which you need to know. So we'll first start with the side which is playing with the isolated pawn. Like this time white. The rules are just reversed when you play back, like the squares are. The rules are the same, for the squares are reversed. Like if I say, if your opponent has an isolated pawn, control the square in front of it, then it applies to white and black. So things are like that. Let's start. Okay, let's start. I'm waiting for it. So let's start with the side which has the isolated pawn. Number one principle for the side which has the isolated pawn. I am definitely tired of saying isolated pawn. So let me introduce one new rule into this video. Whenever I am saying now IQP. IQP is the abbreviation of isolated queen pawn. So now I will say, now forth in this video I'll say IQP whenever I refer to isolated pawn or isolated queen pawn or isolated. So I'll say IQP and you will know that it's isolated queen pawn. Let's start. So first principle of IQP is to plan the D5 brick. The D5 brick is a very important central brick which allows the player which has the IQP to gain more space and more territory for his pieces to maneuver, and also very dangerous activity. When you allow this D5 brick, then it will be very bad for the player who is playing against the IQP. That's gonna be deadly. So one idea is to play D5. Another idea for the player which has the isolated pawn is very natural, to start an attack against the enemy king. So when you have the isolated pawn, you have more files to maneuver and more space, because I have the pawn on D4 and black has the pawns all resting on its third or second places files. So you have the space. So that's why you should try to attack. Third principle is don't exchange pieces. Why? This is very important. Why not exchange pieces? When you exchange pieces, when you have the IQP, you get your pawn always getting into more and more trouble, because the lesser pieces we have, the more weak the IQP gets, and especially in the endgame when the kings can join, the isolated queen pawn or IQP can turn into a real headache for the player who has it. That's why you shouldn't exchange it. Keep all the pieces on the board and try to organize an attack. So these are the major principles for the player who is playing with the isolated pawn. For the player who is against the isolated pawn, there are few principles. First one, like these are the opposite of what you learned with the isolated pawn. First one, control the square in front of the isolated pawn. This time the d5 square. Don't allow them to organize this brick. That's gonna be deadly for you. So that's why you need to control the square which is in front of the isolated pawn, so they don't get any type of break on that one. So you can play e6, then you can play queen e7, rook d8. Somehow control that square. Don't allow them. e6 is one of the main things, because pawns control are very strong. So this is the first principle. Second principle is again the same. Exchange pieces. Start an attack on the opponent's isolated pawn. When you start, second principle is start attack on opponent's isolated pawn. When you start attacking on opponent's pawn, opponent's all pieces suddenly start getting passive, and the player with the IQP is supposed to attack, but now you are attacking. That's the round. So that's the best thing. And third principle is to exchange all the pieces. As we know that on endgames isolated pawns are just dreadful. So that's one thing. And the fourth principle is to exchange the bishop, which is on the opposite color of the IQP. Like if you have a light color IQP like d5, you need to exchange. Like if you are playing against if you are playing with white and your opponent has an IQP of d5, you should try to exchange their dark square bishop. Like in this case, you should try to exchange their light square bishop, because this bishop can create deadly threats along the a2 to g8 diagonal. That's gonna be deadly. You don't want him to do that. So that's not what any person would allow. That's why you should try to exchange this bishop. And these were the principles for the side who's playing with the isolated pawn and against the isolated pawn. So now you have a clear overview of what are the plans and what should you do in the IQP. So now let's start brainstorming. Now all the moves will make sense to you. Rook c8. Now targeting the c4 bishop so that d4 break can't be organized. Bishop e2, bishop e6, controlling the d5 square so that break can't organized. And now I need to confess to you, after bishop into c4. If you have read a book or something, article or something about IQP or video watched you, they might have told you that you need to control, you need to block the square knight b4 knight d5 or knight d5 or knight e7 knight d5 bishop e6 bishop d5. Block the square in front of the isolated pawn, but that's not true. That's a misconception. You need to control the square. Even if you put nothing on that square and just control, it might feel like a little bit greasy, but believe me, it's not. Like in this game, bishop e2 bishop e6, Karpov is not getting in front of the player, because he will play queen d7 rook f d8 and target on this d4 pawn, but when he plays after that knight d5, all his potential is limited on attacking, because the knight blocks the file. Every blockader blocks the file. That's not what you want when you are attacking against the isolated pawn. So bishop e2 bishop e6 queen d2, I gave the overview of what is the isolated pawn, what are the plans and everything. Queen d2, queen a5. Now you are seeing black is the first controlling the d5 square, then he is planning rook f to d8. By the way, I am saying this in every video. The fun of there are many GM habits. Yeah, 5 I am going to share with you in these 5 videos 5 GM habits to become a better chess player. Like GM habits, nothing like long exercise, nothing like that, just habits. Yeah, incorporate these habits and see how your chess improves. So first, one number GM habit is ask yourself, what do they want? What is their next move? Very important. Prophylaxis I told you about in the previous video. Positional Masterclass. I have told you about prophylaxis and how important it is. And this is very important when you play in tournament game, or online or serious game. When you play a serious game, always ask yourself, what do they want? What is their next move? Second habit is to record your time. Believe me or not, it's very important. So this is record. But most important is, which I am sharing, you need to plan. Planning is very important positional chess. Like, what is your plan now? Now, if I am stranded in this position, when I ask someone, let's say, I am stranded in this position. Someone, I don't know anything. Someone asks me, what is your plan? I don't have any clue. I am just blindly just moving my pieces. But when I know so much about IQP, everything, and what I am accomplishing, then I'll know that I am playing rook fd8, rook d7, rook d8, attacking the d4 pawn. That's why I played queen a5. That's every move has a logic. That's a golden rule. Bishop h6, rook fd8. Now pinning and also developing the rook. See the plan. Are you seeing it? I hope so. Bishop into g7, king into g7, rook fd1, and now rook d6 as the plan. We continue to double, and as we can see, Karpov has not touched the d5 square yet. He is just tremendous at these positional masterpieces. He has not touched the d5 square. He is just keeping his way from the d5 square and developing. Rook d6. Now threat is rook d8, and the d4 pawn will be a juicy outpost. Queen e3. Rook cd8. Attacking more. a3. Now a3 is preventing knight b4 kind of moves, but now bishop to b3. Karpov takes the tail at the right time. So after now bishop b3 was played, and now after bishop b3, this is very badly going for white. This is very bad for. You know why? Karpov is just putting constant pressure on this d4 pawn, and he has even demolished their option of doubling to protect the pawn. This pawn is just hopeless now. Rook d2, rook e6. You can see so much activity. Oh my god, this position is like plus how much? Queen d3 is the best move, but queen f4 just a big mistake, and the big mistake of the game, decisive one. I think I might crown this as a blunder. Very big mistake. Karpov clearly understood and played knight d5. Now he is trading one piece. That's in our analogy, knight into d5, rook into d5. He still is constantly putting pressure on this pawn. And can you guess what the cunning threat is of Karpov here? If your tactical vision is sharp, you may realize in how much horror Karpov's opponent will be when he realizes that what Karpov's threat is. Karpov's threat is to, let's say his opponent plays king h1. In the game actually was played g4, just for notice if his opponent plays king h1 for showing purposes. Rook f5 will be played, queen g3, and now rook into f3. Brilliant shot. Nice one if you have seen that. Rook into f3, bishop into f3, queen into d2. And now you are pretty much left behind, and I am now a piece up, and plus in a good mood of attack. So that's why you won't be able to keep that. And after g4, as you know, Karpov, he never gives his opponent a second chance. At least not on when his mood is in the best state. He is just too much of a good player, positional one. He plays d5. Oh my god, not a chance. His opponent thought he will play. He won't play rook f5 and kind of holding the position together, but no chance. Just g5, just crushing. Now it may seem that this is not that kind of thing you are looking for, but trust me, it's good. It weakens the king position, but you can't really target it. Queen g3 was played. Rook f6, now threatening rook into f3, as you know the previous tactic. Bishop d1. Now threat is, after rook into f3, take queen into f3, queen into d2, take bishop into b3. That position might also be good, I believe, but still the one getting the game is way better. And now what should we play? This important movement. This tells how much decision, how good decisions you make on knowledge, and how good decisions you make on your perception and calculation. Now, as I have said earlier, it might seem to you that we should exchange the bishops, but it's concrete. We don't do when it's concrete. He plays bishop c4. Just what an understanding. Picasso. Oh my god. Like, he is a man of too much. Like, it's just too much. He understands when to use the rules and when to break them. He is just pure in positional play. What a play. The level he has of positional play is not even in comparison with other top chess players. He just has way too much knowledge. This man will just outplay. What a understanding of positional play. Even in his early stage of chess, he was only, I think, 15 years old at that time. What an understanding. He understands when to use the rules and when to break them. That's a very big asset. That's not the skill of many chess players. Many lower rated players always obey the rules, like these are universal. But the truth is that nothing is universal. Bishop a6, no rule is universal. That's the truth. That's the bitter truth. Now b3, bishop a6, b4, and pause the video. And what will you play? This time is not of thinking and dramatic tactic or to do a style move and win, but to just make a practical decision. What would you rather do? Take on b4 or move the queen? That's your choice. Well, it might seem to take on b4, but the best choice, practical one, is to just play queen d8. Carbo is just a man of his style. He understood that it's not important to take the pawn here. The pawn can be delayed. Like he has activity, and if he takes the pawn up, his opponent is gaining activity. Like bishop b3, he is gaining knight e5, and now rook has to move to b5 ugly position. Knight e5, it can come at some point. d5 also is lunging with this g5 pawn weakness. That's not what you want in such a stable position. Just queen d8, bishop b3, and now you need to find the straw that breaks the camel's back. Quite a fancy phrase, but Pause the video and find the move that finishes it all. Knight into d4, what a tactical shot. Oh my god. This man is just nuts. Tactical plus positional. I think he deserved to be the world champion. I don't even know how Kasparov beat it. Oh my god. Now rook into d4 was played. If you take bishop into d5 comes knight into f3, bishop into f3, queen into d2, and now it's just over because there's too much of it. My attack is continuing, plus I am a pawn up, so bye bye. Now another thing is that if you another variation to calculate, if you take on d4 with the knight, we play rook into d4, rook into d4, queen into d4, and now it's just over. So that's not what we want. Knight into d4, rook into d4, rook into d4, knight into g5, looking to create some play, but that is just over. Rook d3, h6, knight into f7, queen d4, attacking it, rook e1, and find the la finesse of the game. What is the last move? Pause the video and think. Find the straw that breaks the camel's back. Rook into h3. What an amazing move. This move is nuts. Man, what a move. Okay, let's first take on the result and then we consider why this move is good. See, rook into h3. If you play queen into h3, I play queen into f2, then your even rook falls, then there comes this. So queen into h3, queen into f2 check, king h1 takes, king h2, rook f2, queen g2, I just take, and it's just over. I am a queen up. So now rook into h3, and these are just trapped. So the queen is just trapped, so the game over. What did we learn from this game? The summarization, very important. We learned all things about the IQP. It's abbreviation plus how to play, the basic principles of playing with it and against it, and we learned the very important misconception that you need to block the isolated pawn, the square in front of isolated pawn. No, you need to control the square in front of isolated pawn. That's what makes the difference. That's what in Karpov excels. That's a clear misconception. Another thing is that the perfect combination of strategy and tactics leads to a good game. This was the summarization. Let's go to the daily puzzle. Let's go. This is our daily puzzle for today. This puzzle was made by a composer named Kavurik. I think so, Kavurik or Kavurik, I don't remember his name. Now it's white to play, and you need to pause the video and find the move for white. The whole combination, including variations, if there are any. Now, before we check in the solution, be sure to post your answer in the comment section, and I'll check if it's wrong or big. But don't cheat that you first watch the answer and then write. That's not how someone excels in tactics. Don't cheat like that, okay? Need to promise. You will pause this video right now, find the answer, and then comment in the comment section. Yeah. Then you need to answer. Comment and if you can't, then be honest with your answer. Like write it down, check my answer. If it's correct, hooray. If it's not correct, try better next time. Let's go. So let's start with the answer. Now this puzzle is kind of tricky. Now if with given the tactic, it seems like there is a mate, but you need to find it. Actually it's a mate in 3. Now rook d5 check is the right move. Now many would think of knight d3, e to d3, f4, but the d5 square, the d5 square is the key. The idea you have found is good. If you have found knight d3, the idea is good, but the order is not. First you need to cut off the d5 square. How can you cut off? There's not extra knight to play in b4, so that you can play knight d3 check and then f4 mate. But you can first play rook d5 check, deflecting the c6 pawn to d5, decoying, and now it covers the opponent king. Knight d3 check, e into d3, knight d3 check. By the way, deserves another brilliant move, d3, and now the final straw that breaks the camel's back. f4, beautiful made by one pawn. Even so many forces cannot outwit it. What a beautiful mate and what a beautiful puzzle. Shout out to the composer for creating such a good puzzle. So this was the game and the puzzle. I hope you liked it. Don't forget to click the bell icon. Thank you.